Okay, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome everyone, and we are here to actually listen to a talk on. Well, I guess it's two sides. One is a bit of a description of careers in actuarial science, but we'll also hear about Jorie Bielik's experiences doing an internship in summer 2025, and she did it at Aon, which is headquartered here in the US in Chicago. We also have Anthony Papa, who's going to talk about I guess, the career side more about this one. So let's give a hand and welcome our two speakers for today.
Yeah, cool. But you can just the space bar.
Oh, space. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you guys spend some time with me so I can talk about Aon, convince you all to be actuaries, and go from there. So jump into it. So just a couple of topics. Just do a quick introduction of myself, my career journey, and also level set about what is an actuary. Maybe I can go in a little bit about the differences in the SOA and the CAS, and then I'll give an introduction about who Aon is and what SDG stands for, and the practice I'm about. And then probably the second part that might interest you guys more are some resume and interview tips from my perspective. I did want to make sure that I feel like I have a unique perspective within hiring, and it's certainly not a one size fits all perspective. You have to be true to yourself. So when the advice that I normally give when someone's giving advice is take the parts that apply to you and use that. Everything else you can just throw away. It doesn't, because it's just not who you are. So just level set there. So who am I? I'm Anthony Papa. I went to a small school in Smithfield, Rhode Island called Bryant University, about the size of Hope, maybe a little bit smaller. I graduated with an applied actuarial mathematics major. Like many of you, I didn't know what an actuary was going from high school to college. So I kind of fell into it, and it's been treating me well ever since. The story is I took a math placement exam to figure out where you should fall within the freshman year curriculum. And if you do well on that exam, they send out a letter saying, "Oh, looks like you know how to do numbers well. Why don't you explore this field?" So I explored the actuarial field, and like again, many of you see the high salary, great work-life balance. Seems like a good industry to get into, and that was how I decided to be an actuary. So an actuary is someone that uses statistical analysis to drive business decisions. So as Jorie mentioned, the business school at Hope is a main driver of attendance, and it's a good school. So being an actuary kind of helps facilitate some of those skills that you learn within the business side of your classes. But it's driven by quantitative analysis. There's many different fields that you can get into to be an actuary. There's really, there's two paths. There's the CAS, which stands for the Casualty Actuarial Society, which is on the property and casualty side. So think of your car insurance, home insurance, renter's insurance, or even on the commercial side, workers' comp, general liability, professional liability. So those sort of lines of coverages. And then on the other side is SOA, which is 4 times the size of the CAS. So it's a more predominant society of the two that most colleges will gear their curriculum around. And that's where you can get into the life and health side and pension. Although pension's a dying industry because less companies are offering pensions nowadays. But those are the two tracks. I have some experience on the SOA side, but I predominantly built my career on the CAS side within property and casualty across a slew of those lines that I mentioned. You know, some of the differences that I like to say between the SOA and the CAS. So SOA, it's kind of like a additive, you know, A plus B equals C. It's very prescriptive, and that's the industry for some of the lines there. Whereas with the CAS, it's very dynamic. It's one of the few places I feel like you can be creative in math. You know, math obviously is not a very creative field, but if there was, the CAS provides that opportunity. Um, so I guess that's a little level something of actuarial, uh, just the two sides of it. I did want to just see if anybody wanted me to go a little more detail about either one of those sides. I know Jorie is gonna kind of go into more of the exam track, but as an overview, that's kind of the two differences there. Um, and I know Jorie's going to go through the exams. So I'm an ACAS, so I'm an associate within the CAS. It means that I have to take, I think, during my time, 10 exams to get my designation. But I'm one of only 10,000 in the U.S. with that designation. There's also, if you know, there's 3 more exams I could take to be a fellow, which is an even smaller group of individuals who have that designation. So it's a prestigious field, and you know, if you do travel the journey, you can be really proud of the work that you put in. And then the SOA, it's ASA and FSA. So I'm from Boston. I moved to Chicago 11 years ago. I had a very unique career path, and also in a similar position as some of you seniors now. So I graduated in 2010. This was just after the recovery of the '08 financial crisis. So the job market was pretty tough, and I think right now the job market is pretty tough for a lot of entry level candidates. So I actually started out selling home mortgages with Wells Fargo. I didn't have any exams. I had a major in, you know, the applied actuarial mathematics, but I didn't know how to get into that field, and especially not having an exam is like the ticket to the fair. It's your barrier of entry to getting a job. So I started out doing sales, which today is very important to what I do at my current job, and I'll get into that, and you'll understand why I bring that up. Then I transitioned to Marshall McLennan Companies, MMC. You might know some of their subsidiaries like Guy Carpenter, Oliver Wyman, Marsh, and Mercer. They're also an insurance broker, similar to what Aon does. There, I was in procurement, so it gave me a pretty good experience within just the professional side. And again, still haven't cracked into being an actuary. But I finally passed an exam. So this was a year and a half after I graduated college. And I got my first actuarial job at Life Plans, which is a small TPA, third party administrator of long term care. So on the SOA side. So that's where I speak from my experience of comparing the two. There, I did some regulation form entries, some reserving work, and just nothing that was really fulfilling. So I jumped over to the P&C side, thinking that's again where that dynamic part and the personality that I have would kind of be shown a little bit more. And at Liberty Mutual in Boston, I was doing personal lines pricing, which for all of you, you know, you pay your premiums for car insurance or home insurance every single year. It goes up, and you're like, what the hell? Why is this going up? Actuaries are the reason why it's going up, because they're going through the premiums and losses from the experience within whether states or different coverages, and you calculate a rate change, and then you submit a filing, and it goes forth and so on. A little too much detail about that, but that's what I was doing at Liberty Mutual. And this is actually one of the fascinating things about the actuarial career, especially within insurance companies. They promote rotations, and I know a lot of other companies might have like financial leadership development rotation or a marketing rotation. So as an actuary, you also have that similar opportunity. Liberty Mutual, I was able to do that, and I joined the commercial lines pricing area. And this was where I was actually able to move to Chicago. So when my rotation was up after 18 months, I had never lived outside of New England. I went to school in Rhode Island, grew up in Mass, kind of stayed in that little corner of the Northeast that I hope some of you guys have visited. But I wanted to expand. I wanted to grow. So I had the opportunity to go to New York, which being from Boston, that's an automatic no. Because, just can't do that. I had an opportunity to go to Seattle, visited it, wasn't my type of city. I could have gone to Ireland, which would have been too big of a change for someone who never lived outside of New England. And then I had the opportunity to go to Chicago. I was like, well, it's the same latitude line. Weather's probably similar. It's a big sports town, and being from New England, I've had my share of success in professional sports. So I was like, I'll roll the dice, and never been to Chicago in my life, and I moved there. What was it? I found out in Thanksgiving, so right around this time in 2013 or 2014, I was going to move there. 2 weeks later, went to visit Chicago for apartment hunting, and then 2 weeks after that, I moved to Chicago. Again, just a real roll the dice and see what happens. Original plan was 4 years there and then move back to the Northeast, but you Midwesterners have kept me for 11 years. Also got married, had a kid, made the roots, and there goes my plan of moving back to the Northeast. But I love Chicago. I love the Midwest. And then I started to look at different opportunities within the Midwest, and there's National General Insurance, which they were acquired by Allstate in 2017. So I was there right before that acquisition, doing again personal lines pricing, similar to what I did in Boston at Liberty Mutual. But I always knew that the industry wasn't where I wanted to be, because there's a lot of opportunities in being an actuary, and we have the industry and we have consulting, and you have to just kind of know your personality type as to what you would like to go down. The example that I like to really explain the two differences, to say this is like the breadth of actuarial functions that you're able to do. When you go to the insurance company, you're gonna only get experience in about this part of the actuarial functions, but you're gonna be a deep expert. They have tremendous training, and it's just you have a mass amount of repetition within that area that you're gonna be. So you develop that expertise. Within consulting, you get the lay of the land. You get the full actuarial function, but you don't go so deep in learning. Granted, it's consulting, there's some sales elements, so you have to be able to speak fluently in all of the functions, but it's not a requirement to really know everything. I wouldn't describe myself as a technically sound actuary, but I have skills that other actuaries don't have. And consulting allows me to highlight the skills that I know I have to be successful. So that's where I joined Deloitte. I was at Deloitte for about 5 years. I had tremendous opportunity working in different areas. Got to go to London for a week every single year after January to work on a client, and you get to really enjoy the consulting life. Michelin star restaurants, the whole gamut of consulting. And then, like a lot of consulting stories, I was poached by a client, so I went to AIG, and I was there for a couple of years in a non-actuarial role, but within the executive area of AIG. So I got experience within that business side of insurance, and that's where I really started to realize the opportunities that actuaries have that I think remain untapped because it's a challenge. So being an actuary, it's a business skill, but you rely a lot on the quantitative part of the business. And the business side, they really lack that expertise to analyze the numbers. So there's a valuable opportunity for actuaries to penetrate executive and business decision, really drive change in insurance companies that other departments don't really have. But it is just challenging because, when people hear actuaries, they think, oh, nerds, or, there's that's not what they're good at, or they don't know business. But that is the complete opposite of what an actuary actually is. It really has the skills to really impact the business decision makings. And then, so that's just a sidebar from my time at AIG. I wanted to get back into consulting, and there's an opportunity at Aon to build the actuarial consulting practice for STG, which again, it stands for Strategy Technology Group. The actuarial practice there began in 2023. And so it was that opportunity for me in my career to build something from scratch, which it's rare to find a startup opportunity without that risk of a startup. You don't have to worry about funding because I have Aon, a $15 billion company backing us. So it was just a lucky happenstance that Aon was looking to build this at a time I was looking to make a change in my career. So that's a little bit about my career. To go into to Aon in itself, and I'll give this quickly. We're 60,000 employees worldwide. We're broken down into risk capital and human capital. Risk capital is advisory services, consulting, our brokerage. We're known to being a top 3 broker in the world, and a broker is someone who's helping an insurance company place their insurance, with reinsurance. So that's the just a quick summary of like our main bread and butter. Again, we're number 300 Fortune 500 company, 15 billion in revenue, massive worldwide company with tremendous opportunity across many different fields. This is where STG sits. We're within the risk capital because we're consulting. We're in the reinsurance as we partner with the reinsurers a lot to obtain our work. But again, I'm not going to bore you with the functions there. That's just STG. But I wanted to get into what we do as STG. So our North American group, as I said, I was the first person externally to be hired to join the group in January of 2024. It was me and the practice leader, Paul. We went from us to 9 individuals at the end of the year to we're currently at 15, should be at 18 by the end of the year. And then next year with Jorie's addition and a few others, we'll be up into the mid-20s. So we've had some pretty crazy growth. Revenue-wise, we went from 1.5 million last year to 4.5 million in revenue this year. Next year, we have a $10 million bogey that we're trying to hit. So again, even that is just showing the trajectory of our group. We're built around 3 premises: reserving. So I'll try and explain these really quickly. So reserving is most companies' largest liability on their balance sheet, especially insurance companies, but you can even say for the larger companies that have their own risk management team, reserves are the largest liability. So you need to have experts be able to make sure that what you're booking on that financial sheet is reasonable, and actuaries help with that. And that's kind of like a quick summary of reserving. Capital modeling and enterprise risk management. This is really where you use different math distributions to help companies analyze where they should properly allocate their capital, their cash. Where should they be putting their money, in what areas to promote growth, to grow revenue, to just increase their top line. And then pricing and product management. So pricing, that goes along the lines of the rate indications that I was talking about earlier. Product management is, exactly what it sounds like, but for lines of businesses like homeowners or farm owners, workers' comp, so on and so forth. There's a lot of creativity within product management, and it's an area where actuaries get to show that. dynamic creativity that I was alluding to, because you can provide different solutions to challenges that insurance companies face, but they just don't have the skill set to conquer. So that's what an actuary can help fill. We break our practice even further down into being advisory and outsource. Advisory is just, you have a problem and you want an answer, and we're going to help you with that. Outsource is we're filling a need. So there are a lot of insurance companies that don't have actuaries, and they've kind of just been shooting from the hip and being led blind by what they should be doing for rate changes or how much they should be charging their premium, and they're just they run into challenges. An example is there's a Texas insurer who does not have an actuarial group, and they faced a lot of challenges with the severe storms that run through the state. And because they had no analytical ability, they were placed under supervision by the Department of Insurance. They approached us to do like a post-mortem, like how the hell did we get here? What happened? One of the reasons that we gave was that you don't have any quantitative analytics within your company to help you predict when things are going to be performing poorly, or do you have enough protection in reinsurance for your book of business. So they hired us to be their actuarial outsourced actuarial team. That's kind of what our pillars are. And then again, I know I'm running on time, but these are some of the clients. I'm sure you all have seen a lot of these companies. I did want to point out Lyft. So when you think of actuaries, you think of insurance companies. You think of Allstates, Progressives, Liberty Mutuals. But the larger companies are now starting to see the value in actuaries. So the companies that are able to have their own self-insurance programs, they now hire actuaries. So Uber has an actuarial department. Lyft has an actuarial department. Walmart, actuarial department. These are non-insurance companies that are starting to see the value in having actuaries to help with their risk management programs. So I did just want to kind of plug that it's not just all boring insurance companies. So I know I've kind of zoomed through all of that, but I wanted to get into something that I can articulate in terms of being a successful actuary. And it's tough to say it's like a peanut butter spread. You have all of these, you're going to be successful, because that's not how it works. You have to know yourself, your skills, your personality to really drive being a successful career, let alone being an actuary. Just understanding yourself is going to give you a leg up in the direction to drive your career. But in the sense of being an actuary, the number one skill is technical excellence. As I mentioned, I am not a technically savvy actuary. I understand it. I'm good with numbers. I passed exams, so I understand it from that standpoint. But if you want to drive it down into like programming and coding and things like that, that's not my skill. But I know that my skill is client relationship, or strategic thinking. Those are the things that I know that I possess at a I'd say top 10% level that differentiates myself. So compensates for my deficiencies in being a technically savvy individual. So I don't want people to come away thinking, oh, actuaries, you have to be really good at numbers, you have to be really good at coding, and if I'm not, I can't be in the field. No, I'm trying to say there are areas where if you promote some of these skills and you really harness them and you really excel in them, you can still be a successful actuary. Granted, again, the barrier of entry are the exams and being able to really understand these technical and complicated concepts, but it's not the only thing that makes an actuary. Communication, project execution, these are very important skills. Again, you can apply that across the board to wherever you end up, whether you're going to start your own business or you want to be an actuary. You need to have project management and execution skills and communication. One really tough skill that really I want to highlight is the commercial acumen part. So a lot of actuaries struggle with thinking in the big picture, and this is where Hope College, I think, can help fill that need in the sense of the business part. And I again alluded to this where I saw this at AIG, is if you have the ability to think in a commercial standpoint, you look at you can look at a wall and you see an opportunity of how you could get something out of that. That's more like the commercial acumen that I'm talking about. It's just being creative and understanding challenges from the clients, from the industry, and then being able to think of a solution that a client would want, or just a solution that could better the industry. Um, so these are again just some traits that I want to talk about this being a successful actuary. And then resume and interview tips. I do a lot of interviews, so I have a unique perspective on this. Resume, you know, I don't like just seeing bullets and like this is what I did, like tasks. Everyone has done tasks, but can you put down the impact that you did with those tasks to stand out? That it has that's where you drive that value in showing yourself. Because again, when we look at a resume, we don't see you yet. We just see a piece of paper. So you want to represent yourself to your best value to give you your best opportunity of getting over that barrier of entry. Um, so, standing out with what you put in the content. Formatting is huge. Nobody likes a messy resume. And making it very easy to scan, understand the sections, putting in dividers so that it's concrete where you're making a transition, those sort of things. Like it helps you stand out. Um, this is for the people who are familiar with the exam process, highlighting where you are in the exams. Right now, actuarial profession is growing. And we're not at a time where we were 15, 20 years ago where you didn't need an exam to get a job. It is now, it's the ticket to the show, essentially. You need to have an exam or two to really show that you have the technical competency, and that's just on a paper. Because again, I understand it's super unfair that you're basically being judged by, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and that's supposed to represent who you are. But there hasn't been a better solution yet that's come up in terms of representing yourself. So that's where we are, and that's why I wanted to highlight the exams within the resume, because that's how you will automatically, almost with certainty, get an interview if you have an exam, and especially if you have two. And then include tools that matter. Research the position that you're going to be applying to, and highlight that. So programming, everyone knows the Microsoft suite, and everyone assumes that that's what you're capable of doing. But if you have a GitHub because you're into programming, put that on there. That's a differentiator. If you've done R, but not just like in the class, but actually worked on R or Python or Java or any of those, like just highlight those skills. That really just helps, just getting to get to the interview. Because once you get to the interview, that's the part that's challenging. You want to show who you are, but you want to show a professional version of who you are. I despise interviews where it's not a conversation. You want to have just a conversation. If I have to go and just rattle off my questions and then you answer them, that's not really an interview. I'm not getting to know who you are, because as a company, we're putting investment into who you are and the skills that you have that you showed on your resume, so that we can see if you're going to be the right match for a position. So like really, I like to emphasize, just be yourself. I mean, look at me. I don't really look like a typical actuary. I have a beard, I have an ear. It's not like a common feature, but it's who I am, and I'm proud of who I am. So I try and exude that, and then that kind of it knocks down a wall. Be prepared. Don't just look at the website Like, so if you're applying to a position at Aon, don't just look at aon.com. Everyone does that. Go deeper, dig deeper, find something that you can bring up so that when you ask a question about that, it shows the interviewers that, oh, you actually put in some effort. That's a good question. It will stand out in the interviews if you do that. And again, the be conversational, this is similar to who you are. You don't want an interview where it's just question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. Everyone does that. You're not going to stand out that way. And especially in a competitive job market right now, you want to stand out. So be who you are, just have a conversation and just let it flow. This goes to the point about the research. Ask high quality questions. Yes, it's good to ask, what's the day-to-day life of the job? Like, what would I be doing? Because, most HR screeners aren't going to understand that. And when you get to the business interview, that's where you want to go. But then dig deeper in these questions so that it shows the interest in the position. It's not that you're just interested in getting a job and a paycheck, but you're interested in what the work that is being done. Because you want to, again, stand out. That's the whole point of the interview. You want to be remembered. That's the key at the end of an interview. You don't want to people, because the whole process is after we screen, 5, 10, 15 of you, we then have a feedback session a week later. And if you were an early interviewer and nothing stood out, it doesn't bode well, because then we have our notes to rely on, but you can't envision that person be part of the team. So again, you just want to stand out, and bringing energy is a great way to stand out. And we just got a follow-up email from a candidate, and granted, I don't advise this all the time, but with his personality of how he was during the interview, he was talking about how he's ready to kick ass for our team and like very excited about the opportunity, and it stood out. We still talk about this candidate, and we interviewed him 3 weeks ago. That's what I'm trying to emphasize about, standing out, being who you are, and give yourself the best opportunity and be in the best position to get a job offer or further along within the interview process. So yeah, I know that was a little scattered, a little all over the place, but certainly interested if you have any questions, or are we saving questions at the end?
Questions for
Save questions to the end. And then Jorie's going to talk about her experience as an intern with the SDG.
Thank you. Yes, we will open back up for questions at the end. So if you do have a question on your mind for Anthony, write it down or keep it in your mind. But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Jorie. I'm a senior here, graduating in just a couple weeks now, which is bittersweet, but something that I do have to look forward to is going back and working for Anthony on the STG team at Aon. So now that you guys have a little bit of background into what STG is, what actuaries do, and kind of how that team functions, I'm going to tell you about my experience as an intern there this summer. So the internship itself was 10 weeks long. It was advertised as a hybrid internship, and we were given the option to come in only 3 days a week. But my co-intern, Nikki, and we went in almost every single day just to take advantage of being in Chicago. It was a beautiful building. You can see the amazing view. That's the view from the 70th floor where I would eat my lunch every day. And the south facing view looks right into Millennium Park. So I would walk past the Bean on the way to work every single day. And yeah, the internship as a whole just exceeded my expectations. It was super fun, and I learned an unbelievable amount in just the short 10 weeks. And some projects I got to work on, these are just a few examples, but the top two specifically were research-based projects, and the bottom ones are more client projects and in the consulting space, and then the three reserving, pricing, product management, and capital modeling functions of the STG team. But the Aon United project was a research project across all of the interns at Aon. So like Anthony said, Aon is a huge company, so they had tons and tons of interns all across the country, and I was paired with about 7 random interns, and I got to act as the project manager for that research project, and we researched Aon's practices in environmental, social, and governmental their governmental social consulting practices, and come back and present on ways that they could capitalize on AI and for the sake of sustainability. And then the second one, AI in the E&S market, was a co-intern project with just me and the other intern on the STG team. And we researched Aon's uses of AI, and in the state that AI is currently at, how our team could better use AI in the future. And then also researching AI in the E&S market. For those who don't know, the E&S market provides coverages for risks that are unusual or maybe too risky for typical insurance companies to insure. So it leaves more room for AI to play a role because it's less regulated. So we researched how our team could make better use of AI in consulting in this space. And as I was thinking of the client projects that took up most of my time during the internship, I wanted to consider how mathematics played a role and where my degree would show up during this job and where I saw it in the actuarial career. With reserving and pricing specifically, these two practices rely a lot on expected value calculations and data trend analysis, where we would look at the capital and claims states in companies in previous quarters to project how much they should reserve in future quarters, or how they should price their insurance. And so these mathematical concepts came up a lot in projects that I was on for those. And then capital modeling is very reliant on probability modeling and running thousands and thousands of simulations to project potential future states of a company's capital. So probability theory was very present in that space. And aside from these projects alone, like Anthony was talking about, exams are a huge part, a central pillar of the actuarial career. And the exams themselves are very much rooted in mathematics. They pull on probability and financial mathematics, and then very heavily on statistics. So you use a lot of calculus in those exams. And I'll talk a little bit about those more in depth and what they look like in practice in a little bit. But it was hard to narrow down my whole internship and do a few key takeaways. But I have 3 that I found to come up most often. And the first thing that I was told when I started my internship was to network. And I was told to meet as many people as I possibly could in the 10 weeks. And I really took that and ran with it, and ended up meeting with about 35 or 40 different people, sat down for coffee with them during the 10 weeks. And that was a great opportunity, because I think networking is really important, because you never know how relationships you build in the business world are going to help you in your future career. You might not know who you're going to need help from, and who's going to help you in your career growth. So that's one aspect of that networking that is an asset. But also internships are a great opportunity to figure out, test drive, is this what you want to do for your career? And so sitting down and meeting with people who have maybe a different role from you, and being able to think, okay, maybe that's more aligned with my career goals, or I definitely can't do what they're doing. I'm definitely in the right career path. That's another aspect of networking that's very helpful. And when I would meet with people, I would ask some of the same questions over and over again. So my next 2 key takeaways are something that almost every person gave me advice for. And one was to ask questions. As an intern, you're not expected to know everything. I had no idea what what capital modeling was. I really didn't know what reinsurance or reserving meant when I came in as an intern. But just because you're not expected to know everything doesn't mean that everyone is going to know what you don't know. So you can only learn by asking those questions and showing your curiosity and asking deeper questions. And people are really willing to answer your questions and help you along the way. And so that's a really great way to learn. And then the last key takeaway was to say yes. Just because you don't know how to do something, that shouldn't be your excuse to say no to an opportunity to learn something new. So if someone were to ask you to do a project or do a task that you don't know how to do, you say yes first and then you ask questions. And doing a task or repeatedly doing something is honestly a better way to learn than just by asking questions. And so that was a good piece of advice that I got from a lot of the colleagues that I met with. And so you might be wondering, okay, how in practice do you get from where you're sitting to going into the career of being an actuary? And obviously the exams are a big part of that. So on the next few slides, I'm going to show the CAS, which is property and casualty, and then the SOA, the health and life insurance, those tracks for the exams. They are different, but you'll notice that the first two exams are consistent between the two. So until you've passed two exams, you don't have to decide which type of insurance you're going into. So this is if you want to take a photo, you're welcome to. They can also be found online, but the CAS requirements are here. Anthony kind of briefly outlined this, that the ACAS is what he has, and then the very small proportion of actuaries who have the fellow title have the last three exams. The first thing under the first column is the validation by educational experience, and those are classes that you take. And Hope actually offers all of the classes necessary to fill those requirements for both CAS and SOA. And then the SOA track I know less about, but this is basically their equivalent of the first two columns to for the ACAS that I showed on the last slide. And then this is their fellow requirements. You can see there's a lot of different tracks just within SOA. Like Anthony mentioned, the health and life insurance is a lot larger of a field than the property and casualty. So there's a lot of different tracks you can go down, and depending on which one you choose, that depends on the exam that you take. And so then, like I mentioned, the validation by educational experience is the left-hand table, and these are all the classes that are required for that. The first four are the only ones that CAS requires, and then in addition, SOA requires all 5 of those classes. And then this table here, these are classes that I would recommend that I found to be super helpful for me in just taking exams, intro to probability and actuarial problem solving, which are both running next semester, so you still can register for them. Those both help in preparing for the P exam, the probability exam, which is typically the first or the second exam that you take. Unfortunately, since I messed up my ordering of classes and I had to take the intro to probability after I took the P exam, it definitely would have been a lot easier to pass if I had taken that first. So I would highly recommend taking that class. And then the third one is statistics for data science. I didn't know this until just now, and right now I'm studying for the modern actuarial statistics exam, which is on the CAS track. And I would say about 40 to 50% of the material on that exam is covered in statistics for data science. Again, I took that class 2 years ago, so if I would have known that, I would have taken it now, because I'm now having to relearn everything from that class. But highly recommend it regardless because it was a great class. And then business computing, I think every single person should take. It's all on Excel. And no matter what you're going into, Excel is going to be super valuable to you. And having those skills and knowing the shortcuts and tricks will just make your life a lot easier. Okay, now we can open up for questions with, if you have any questions for Anthony or I know we don't have much time left, but.
So you guys mentioned that SOA was more like on the health insurance side. My question is, how much flexibility is there in the SOA portion versus the CFS?
Flexibility as in,
Like the type of work you could be doing.
I know it's hard to answer because I haven't had that much experience in the SOA, but for like the health insurance, obviously a lot of the changes are mandated by politicians. So that's why there's a larger force of actuaries, because there's constant change. Every new administration, new midterm, they're making changes to the healthcare, and implementing those changes is where a lot of the actuaries are needed. But from the SOA side, there is the life, which has the annuities. Okay, that's an area. So Prudential, John Hancock, some of those are the companies that are on like that life side. That's where you can leverage your skills. But like Jorie, her slide on the SOA exam track, once you get to the FCAS area, it starts to break out even more into the specialties of the SOA area. So I would just recommend looking more at the SOA if you had more questions about that.
This question goes to both of you, but do you have any advice for those who are trying to be an actuary because of the workload,
Like the exams?
like the exams and studying for it?
Advice. So repeat that one more time.
Yeah, I said, do you have any advice for those without trying to be an actuary because of the workloads? So committing to going in with it. So saying,
Well, think of the exams as your graduate program. That's the best way to think of it. When you go into other fields, you're going to be continuing your education, maybe not working. At least being an actuary, you get paid to continue. So that would be, my frame that you should think it as.
I would definitely say the same thing. I was really nervous about the exams. I didn't think that I was like smart enough to take these exams. And I don't even love calculus. Sorry for the calculus professors in here. But I shed many tears over differential equations. And so I thought that there's no way that I could pass actuarial exams. But as long as you put in the work and you stay committed, like you'll be able to pass them. It is hard work and they're by any means not easy, but if I could do it, you could do it.
And to hone in more, I failed exam 1 for P 9 times before I passed. Didn't know how to study. Couldn't figure it out. I was thinking, I took courses that should get me through it. Let me do 2 weeks of problems before, just like you would in a college course. Wasn't how you do it. That's not how you pass exams. But I learned it the hard way. I learned what it was. But it also gave me the skill of perseverance, because I knew I wanted to be an actuary. I knew I wanted to go down that field, and it didn't matter how many times I failed. I'm just going to keep on going. And that's if you doubt it, you're just doubting like yourself. And you're not doubting being an actuary.
Good question. We probably have time for like one more question.
How would you strategically space out the time that you actually take the exams to best benefit yourself?
That's a good question. I think that it varies. I took exam P for the first time in March of my sophomore year. I failed it the first time and then I passed it in May. And then I took FM in November and passed it on the first try. I was a little tired of taking exams at that point, was a little burnt out. So I haven't taken an exam since November of last year. and I'm planning on taking the third one at end of January. So it varies. I think that realistically, 2 a year is like what I think is average. I don't know.
So because the first two exams are so important to get yourself noticed for a job, they're offered more frequently. I think they're offered 6 times a year. And then unfortunately, you guys have to decide what track you'd want to go down. I was fortunate where it was the first 4 were overlapping, so I could wait a little bit, but you guys can't. So it's the first 2, but then the frequency goes down. So the third and fourth exam are offered 3 times a year. I think it might go up to 4 just because they're trying to get more people to get credentials. But then once it gets to exam 5 for at least the CAS track, and also for most of the SOA, it's twice a year. So you're limited already how many times you can take the exam.
Thank you.
Yep.
How attainable is a career as an actuary being a math minor compared to a
Doesn't matter. They're economics majors who are actuaries. It's all about what effort you want to put in to be an actuary. What's the effort you're going to put in to pass the exams? The exams make you an actuary, not the major.
Yeah, there were other interns that I met over the summer who were business majors, math minors, and they were going into actuarial. Just as long as I think you show that you're going to take exams and that you can pass them is really important. If anyone does have other questions, I know it's 3:50 now, so we'll probably have to go. You can stay and we'll stay down here for a little bit. But thank you.